Hello and welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul mouse spoilerful comic book podcast where two comic fans and two non-comic fans discuss controversial comic books. I'm Sly.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
So we crapped on Stanley for 2 weeks straight. Well, a month, kind of, whatever.
Yeah.
Scheduling is weird. But now we're going to maybe potentially redeem him in the eyes of some of us. Maybe not all of us.
In the eyes of the law.
Yeah, in the eyes of the law. And we're going to talk about what makes Stanley a good writer. And we're going to use some of the most, notorious is not the right word.
Iconic, I guess. Noteworthy.
Famous. Noteworthy.
Yeah. Examples. Like when people cite best Stanley stories, they often cite the ones we're going to do now.
Reading these, realized I had already read them because Sly forced me to read these comics in 8th grade, some of them.
Yes.
Like, for sure, the Fantastic Four one and the Silver Surfer one I read already.
Yes, I remember giving you those.
I think Sly made me read these too, but not made. I think he recommended all of these to me.
No, he put a gun to my head in 8th grade and was like, I'll kill you.
My wave of terror forcing people to read Stanley comics in the 60s.
Well, I think it's interesting is that all these comics that are suggested are from the 60s. Like, it's not modern Stan Lee. Like,
Yeah.
Like, he peaked, you guys would probably say, and it's been downhill from there.
Yes,
So,
I would say
that's
that.
important to note because I forget what we said last episode. I forget what happened last episode. I forget who I was last episode.
Wonder Woman was a South American woman.
Yeah.
Yes.
You promised at some point that Stanley didn't evolve as a writer. He writes like it's the 60s forever, pretty much. But at the time when he wrote, it was a big step forward because no one wrote superheroes as human beings before. Were all like, I'm so goody-goody, let's do the good thing. And they all got to belong together. No one had any conflicts. Team books were just boring schlock. And it's a good thing to read these stories if you ever wonder why certain characters are popular. Like, if you ever wonder why Fantastic Four has ever been popular, they're so lame. The movies were so lame. Fantastic Four was the first team book where they actually follow each other. Like the first 10 issues, like every other issue, Thing and
Johnny.
Human Torch and Johnny Storm would get to actual fights and try to kill each other. Like, not fully kill each other, but maybe, I don't know. They're throwing cards at each other, trying to smash their heads in.
The way team books worked in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s was there would be a framing device where all the heroes would show up and they'd be like, there's some villain with 5 different plots, and then they would split up and they would just be 5-page solo stories of each character. And in the end, they'd come back and be like, we did it. And there was no interpersonal dynamic whatsoever.
That is so lame.
Yeah.
For such a long time, too.
Yeah.
I originally, like, the only comics I actually enjoyed originally that Sly was showing me was the X-Men stuff because it was really cool to see them, like, bounce off each other's ideas, and in battle they would fight together and they would get into fights with each other. Like, it was interesting, actually.
And even though I assume the X-Men stuff that Sly gave you was more like the late 70s.
It was Chris Claremont era.
Yeah. But none of that like would have happened without Stan Lee's team dynamics.
And just even like if you like the iconic teams now, like Justice League, or Avengers, they came out of Fantastic Four too. Like every iconic team now, like the Avengers films would not happen for many reasons because without Fantastic Four, but the team dynamic is one important one.
Yeah.
So let's stop jerking off Stanley's innovations and start jerking him off in other ways with our first comic for tonight, Fantastic Four issue 51, This Man, This Monster.
From 1966.
And before Phil starts, we should just give a little context to show like how much stuff was happening this time and how much Stanley was like creating all these iconic characters. This happened immediately after Galactus and right before
Black Panther.
So like it goes from what happens was during the Galactus story, Silver Surfer shows up for the first time. Silver Surfer helps save the world, and Silver Surfer starts not macking it on. He starts hitting off well with the Thing's girlfriend Alicia, and that makes the Thing get really sad because he reminds him that he's a freak, while Silver Surfer is this Adonis encoded in silver.
I noticed because in this issue it brings up like the Thing brings up Alicia being with Silver Surfer. I was like, what? Like, can you even romance Silver Surfer?
Well, the context to that I think is important because we're going to talk about Silver Surfer in a little bit too. Is when Silver Surfer shows up, he's just like this cold, callous, like just space guy that's like, I'm just here to do my job. Mm-hmm. And Alicia is a very kind blind woman who like helps him when he gets like damaged by the Fantastic Four, and it's what shows him that there's good in humanity, because it's someone who like the world has ignored and rejected, that she's still going out of her way to help someone she doesn't even know. And like Ben, because he's just like a big dope, takes that as like, well, she obviously loves him because he's got like nice pecs and like I'm a monster. And like Ben is always very self-loathing, so even though like they're not actually like dating or anything, he takes it as like she deserves better than me.
I mean, if you were a rock monster, I think you'd probably feel the same way.
If
No, I wasn't thinking about from Ben's perspective. I was thinking about from Alicia and Silver Surfer's perspective. Where I'm like, I have no idea how this relationship would work, because at least from what I know of Silver Surfer, he's very kind of like distant.
You mean how's his penis work?
That's what he means. I'm gonna use my cosmic touch.
That's one thing that's like when the character was first created, Stanley wrote him to just be like Ryan said, just cold and robotic. Yeah. But the way Jack Kirby drew him, who's the artist of the story, Jack Kirby drew him very heroically. And as Stanley wrote Silver Surfer more and more, he basically made him more and more human, because he felt like a character who looks this noble should not just be a robotic monster. He should have something underneath him.
You know, and I said like I can't imagine that relationship working, but I also read Swamp Thing, and I think that's a great relationship there.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm wrong.
yeah. Well, it's one of those things that sounds silly, but like in application, I think it works.
Yeah.
This issue starts out with the Thing, Ben Grimm, standing in the rain with the title "This Man, This Monster." I think it's actually a really cool opening page.
Yeah.
And he's basically just moping around, saying like, I'm a monster, I'll never be human again, I'm just gonna look like this forever. And people are trying to be nice to him. Like the cops are like, hey, you need a ride? And he's like, yeah, right. As if anyone wants to be nice to me. Mm-hmm. And some other guy opens his door and says, hey, come in, it's dry in here. And this guy is like he's human, but he has like a thing-like face.
He has no eyebrows.
He has like a caveman brow, and I thought immediately, I was like, oh my god, it's Red Skull in disguise. This is a Red Skull man.
He not only does he have a caveman like forehead,
yeah,
but he also has no eyebrows, so he looks like I don't know, like
he looks like the Red Skull.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna say Silver Surfer with face makeup on, but Red Skull's better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And basically, this guy invites him in, and he drugs his coffee and says, yeah, like, hang out, you can sleep on my couch. And then while he's asleep, he opens his door. It turns out he's actually a scientist.
Oh, they opens the door, it's just a giant machine stuck
like in his closet.
I'm like, how do you get in there to work on that machine?
we should mention, because Ryan and I always has an argument, and we haven't had it yet, and I just want to bring it up because it's relevant. Ryan said Jack Kirby sucks. Every comic he draws...
That's not what I said.
Every comic he draws, he just has giant machines everywhere in every page. And I'm like, that makes it cool. Like, giant machines are fucking cool. And Ryan's like, no, can you just stop the giant machines just once, Jack Kirby? And I'm like, no, you should never stop. It's a beautiful man, Jack Kirby.
I never said it sucked, but I was like, it's funny because Jack Kirby like he goes out of his way to be like, look at these giant machines.
Yes.
I didn't notice it until I read like modern fourth world stuff that was after that, and there's literally characters like, look at all these giant machines, these must be, and then he just like labels a bunch of Jack Kirby characters. I'm like, it is giant machines.
Yeah, so this giant machine's in the closet, and what does it do, Phil?
And so now that we know Jack Kirby sucks, quoted Ryan, he basically attaches it to himself and to the Thing, and it's going to duplicate the Thing's powers onto this guy.
Yeah.
Not just duplicate it, like it steals the powers, which again, one of the funniest, silliest, dumbest things about the Fantastic Four is every week the Thing changes back into a person for one issue only.
Yeah. Yes. And this guy's like, well, our skeletons are similar, so this will work. And it does. It works flawlessly. The Thing is back to human, sleeping on the couch, and now this evil scientist is the Thing.
And we should mention really quickly that while he was talking to the Thing, he was like, I've been mocked to Thing. Don't worry about it. And then when he's like monologuing to himself as Thing is asleep, he's like, yes, now I get revenge on Reed Richards, who has everything I should have. I'm so smart.
Yeah, because this guy's like a spurned scientist. He's like, how come I don't have all the scholarships and like research grants that Reed Richards
Yeah,
has?
and the fame, because Reed Richards is like famous.
Which is great because it cuts back to Reed Richards, and he's just an asshole for almost this entire issue, which is really great. Because comes over and she's like, "What about dinner, Reed?" And he's like, "I can't." And she's like, "You said that last night and the night before." And he's like, "Don't worry, this won't take too much longer." And that he needs the Thing's help and not her help.
But he's sitting here trying to make a weapon to fight Galactus. Imagine a World Eater showed up and you beat him up, but now you're like, he could come back. I need to make something. I'm the only person.
I'm showing sympathy for Sue, who just wants a kind of like a normal family. And of course, she had to fall in love with this guy.
Yeah.
For the record, it was her teacher.
Yeah.
Great.
But yeah, like Galactus had just left, so I get it. But at the same time, like Reed does a lot of things like, "No, Sue, you can't help me. You're fucking useless."
I mean, if you need someone to hold you as you jump through time, don't you need someone who's strong?
Can't you have a machine that does that? You're making a machine that opens a doorway to a negative dimension.
But he doesn't have a grappling hook.
Oh yeah, and the thing he's creating is he wants to like find a way to go past hyperspace because eventually he says they'll fight beings that can go
like faster than light. He's saying like
Silver Surfer.
Silver Surfer goes faster than light, and like humans can't yet, and we're gonna fall behind if we don't have it. So he's making this giant machine. Since this is Jack Kirby, who's a piece of shit, and basically Thing shows up, and he's acting kind of weird.
The imposter thing.
Yeah, fake thing. Shows up and he's like, "Wow, I'm lifting the thing," and they're like, "Yeah, of course you are."
He's not lifting himself.
He's lifting the object that the Reacher tells him.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
It's not that out of character though, because Ben Grimm, who I love, is just a big idiot though. So like when he's like, "Wow, can you believe how strong I am?" This is pretty much how Ben usually talks.
Yeah. But it's funny, everyone's like, "Why are you acting so weird, Ben? Like acting so stupid all of a sudden? Like you're usually so smart."
The real Ben Grimm shows up, who looks like a human now, and he's like, "It's not really me. I'm me." And they basically have one of those scenes where they're like, "No, I'm the thing. No, I'm the thing." And
he's the imposter. Shoot him.
Yeah, and Sue Storm are basically siding with the imposter because he looks like Thing, even though this guy looks like their human friend who they knew for forever, right? Like,
yeah, they're like astonished by that, and they're like, "Wow, he could be the real deal."
And also one thing that's very funny, he says, Ben Grimm says, "Reed Richards, boy genius, hot, what a laugh." Who the fuck calls Reed Richards boy genius? He's like gray haired. Like what?
Well, he knew him since he was a kid, I guess.
That's true.
Also, I like this concludes with Ben Grimm being spurned, and he walks away, like he walks out away from them because he's like, "Fine, if you guys think he's the thing, then he's the thing." And it's like, can't you just be like, "Let's talk about what we did yesterday"?
I think he's probably just like, "Fuck you guys for not believing me." Like, I think he's just like angry with the whole situation. He's angry about his life.
Yeah, it's just funny that that's such an easy way to solve the imposter syndrome if they don't have your memories. And instead, Ben's like, "See ya, Reed."
Well, to be fair, like we said, Ben's not really that smart. But we do note later on that, as he's going to see Alicia later on, he does note that, I have to go back eventually. I got to make sure that the imposter thing is taken care of or something like that. So it doesn't ban him completely, but he is like, "Fuck you guys."
He's just pissed off.
Yeah.
And then, so this guy, they're like, "Wow," like Darryl said, like this, he really could have passed for Ben Grimm. And then we see another giant machine. This machine is giant. Like this.
The whole page, a splash page.
It's a whole page machine.
It's an
like,
Escher-esque kind of looking machine.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And this is the thing that can allow them to go faster than light.
You have to stop saying thing. You have to start saying objects. Because it's very confusing.
There's this like subplot here that's really strange where they're at college, right?
Just to sum up briefly, Johnny Storm's going to college at this time, and he got like Native American like beefy hunk of a man called
That's his roommate.
Yeah, he's his roommate, and what happens is while Johnny's getting bullied by this jock who's like jealous of him because Johnny's famous. Y steps in. He's like, "I am a tower of a man," and the football coach is like, "I want the tower of a man for my team," but he doesn't want to join my team. And
I find it so funny how his reasoning for not wanting to join, he's like, "I don't do athletics." It's like, no, you are the buffest man I've seen in comics. Like,
that's a good point.
You do athletics somehow. You work out.
Yeah, he's a regular human. He's not a superhuman. Like he's like,
no, he's just one of those bodybuilders. He has like no cardio training at all. he runs only 5 feet.
But according to Batman by Stan Lee, that makes him the strongest fighter in the world.
Yeah, you're right.
So that useless subplot. We cut back here, and the way this hyperspace thing works is Reed Richards is going to go into this negative dimension where
This is the first appearance of the negative zone, guys.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what this was. I don't exactly understand how this has to do with faster than life. light travel, but
That's in life.
faster than life. Basically, he
It's
goes
a
into
4-dimensional universe.
yeah, he goes into like an abstract like Doctor Strange scene.
Okay, one thing I want to say, I make fun of Jack Kirby's Giant Machines a lot, but I love when he does collages. So Reed goes into this world, and it's like lots of like bright, colorful, like you said, like Doctor Strange style stuff, and it's got the Kirby crackle, which are all these like black dots all over it. And then there's a full page of Reed in this like world that's a completely like not a comic book style. It's a collage of like shapes
It's like
and
photos
stuff.
of planets,
and it just like it gives it this
spheres.
otherworldly feel
Yeah,
that
it's really
I think
cool.
is really, really cool.
It's really cool.
Who's the Doctor Strange guy? Is that Ditko?
That's Ditko, yeah.
Yeah, I think I like his stuff more. I like Kirby's machines. I like Ditko's imagination worlds.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I don't think this is as good as the Doctor Strange scenes, but it reminded me of that. And as he's in here, he has a rope that that goes back to the thing, and he says, "If I am in trouble in this negative dimension, I'm gonna pull on the rope and you pull me back," which seems like a really it should at least be like a full body harness.
Yeah, it seems flimsy for a weird 4-dimensional faster than light thing.
Like if it's warping reality, can't it just warp your rope too? Like,
Well, that is kind of what happens.
Yeah, but
Well,
we were just account for the fact that rope will snap, and that's what happens. Ben's like holding out the rope. And he's like, "Should I help him or should I not?" And Sue's like, "Ben, help him," and he's like, "I don't know."
yeah, and
This
the whole
guy-
time he starts thinking like, maybe Reed Richards is not actually an asshole like I thought, because he's spending all this time trying to make this stuff for humanity, and he's not going to get famous from this. He's risking his life.
And he says, like, if he's going to explore this dimension, like, I would have called a press conference and made this a huge deal, but he's just doing it.
Yeah, I don't envy him anymore. I never knew how brave he was, how unselfish. All these years when I never got the breaks, now I know the truth. It was my fault, nobody else's. I wouldn't work hard enough. I wouldn't make the sacrifices that Reed Richards would.
Yeah, and
Bootstraps, you know?
so he's sitting there trying to think about this, but he waits forever, and the rope snaps. And this guy, who's again an evil scientist who looks like the Thing, he pushes Sue Storm back because she's ready to jump in the hyperspace thing, and this Ben Grimm jumps in, and he gets now stuck with Reed Richards in this hyperspace thing where they're flying towards negative Earth or something.
Yeah, they're on like a flat piece of debris, and they're gonna collide with Earth and explode, leaving Earth.
Basically, on an asteroid heading towards Earth. Basically, since everything's negative and they're positive, they touch anything positive, they'll explode.
Yeah, whatever. It's really
Negative,
dumb.
whatever.
But they basically, like, Reed Richards, as they're standing on this rock, he's like, you're the best friend I've ever had. Like, thanks
love
for
you, man.
coming to save me, and I'm so sad we're both gonna die together, but, like, I wish you didn't come. And even at this time, the evil scientist is like, this guy is such a good guy, and I was jealous and hating this guy, and he says, I ain't even worth his little pinky. And he picks up Reed Richards and says, the only worthwhile thing I ever did in my whole life. And he
My
throws,
whole wasted life.
he throws Reed Richards back all the way to our world, and then says, like, I hope you make it back, and then dies. Like, he fucking dies.
He says, as for me, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. Not many men get a second chance to make up for the rotten things they've done in their lifetime. I guess I'm luckier than most. I got that chance, for I finally learned what it means to have a friend.
It's
As
really
he's
sad.
on the astral field heading towards Earth to blow up.
Because he's the villain of the story, but very quickly he's like, I think maybe I was wrong, and these are not
Especially, like, at this time, comics where, like, it was explicitly said by the government that, like, you can't make evil people sympathetic. They either have to be bad guys or good guys. So this is, like, really ahead of its time.
And also compared to Stanley, Just Imagine, where all the villains were caricatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy basically wasn't a villain. He was just trying to what he saw as an asshole, like celebrity scientist. He's trying to like bring him down a peg, and then he ends up saving. His life.
Well, he did want to kill him.
Well, he didn't go there to kill him. It's just that he got the opportunity where he's
No,
like, I'm gonna trust.
he said, "I will destroy the Fantastic Four," because that's my classic thing of like Stanley. All the villains always have to go from 0 to 100, where they're like, it's world domination or complete destruction of all these people. Instead of like, I just want to shame these people.
Yeah, that's true. And then
Like we always have to point out, like in the context, like everyone was like 100 at this point. Like you don't have super nuanced villains like to that degree at this
Like,
point.
this is, like, one of the most nuanced villains up to this point.
and it ends with the Thing going to Alicia, and he looks like a human, and he's like, as he goes to knock on the door, he becomes the Thing again. He's like, ah, shit, I'm the Thing again. And now he's like, well, I'll go beat up the imposter at least. And then he runs back, and he sees them, and they talk about it, and Reed Richards is like, we don't know what he did before this or his plans, but one thing is certain: he paid the full price, and he paid it like a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's I forget the number already. 51.
51.
I really like that story.
Yeah.
Me too.
It's one of the most famous single Fantastic Four stories.
And one of the things, it was hard to pick a Fantastic Four story because like everybody's always done Galactus, and it's like
Yeah.
I feel like it's the obvious one to do. But like even we saw with this dumb Johnny scene throughout the whole book, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's run was a little over 100 issues on Fantastic Four, and there's always these subplots under, and then like Wyatt Wingfoot is going to become like a more major character as Johnny's education becomes a more major thing, and like it's something that we don't see as much nowadays, where like because there wasn't trades and there wasn't collected editions, it would be one long arc that just had subplots that became main plots as new subplots formed, and like it was hard to pick just one issue to do.
Oh yeah, that's one thing to mention. The Johnny Storm stuff, like it might seem out of place here, but that's why it's hard to pick a Stanley story, because every Stanley story never is one complete story. Like all the good ones, at least. Every time Stanley does this, beginning and middle and end, it's always kind of crappy. Like the Stanley Just Imagine stuff. He's always best when he's making like these long arcs that go over many issues, which is a good example in our next story.
And like even this is a good like insight into his Ben Grimm, like sad, like self-loathing kind of like guy from just like a city boy that's just like in over his head, but like. This is just an insight where he develops that character the whole time of him, like, he keeps getting closer and closer to actually, like, having someone love him, and he keeps ruining it because they don't, like, he doesn't think he deserves to be happy, and, like,
yeah,
it's all that. The only character he doesn't really develop is Sue because he hates women.
Yeah.
Also, it's worth saying, like, one of our complaints with Stan Lee is that he writes too much. And I still think he does that here, but
Yes.
the writing is still good, I think. Like when Ben is storming away when they don't believe him, I thought the writing there was really good, where he's like, oh, what do I care? It's your funeral. It'll teach you a lesson for once. Like you can see his anger in always being you don't think that's good?
No, I feel like it's so strange to go from like the DC Imagine stuff was like so bad, where I'm like, I think it's all roughly the same quality of writing for me.
I don't think so.
I don't think so at all.
Yeah, I think DC Imagines, like, it feels like a fifth grader wrote it. Like, it's like, there's a comic called Axe Cop, which is like a little child.
I love X-Cop.
Writes like a story.
Do you mean
like,
X-Grave?
But imagine like X-Grave, Darryl story. Like, if somebody made an actual, like, legit comic out of that, like, with, like, Jim Lee's drawing it.
X-Cop is a professional artist's, like, 2-year-old or 5-year-old brother or something. He writes the scripts, and it's just like, I'm X-Cop. I have an axe. I'm going to kill all the criminals.
Yeah, like, I feel like, that, just imagine, the writing feels like that. It's not that bad, like, that disparity. Disparity's not that bad, but it is still, like, it's so simplistic. Like, the character work is so simplistic. Like, the dialogue is so simplistic. This does over-explain stuff, but, like, it's still, the character, everyone has a clear voice. Like,
And they have emotions that come out in the writing.
Yeah. Like, the biggest thing is that everyone has a clear voice. Like, if you hear Ben Grimm talk, you can tell it's Ben Grimm talking. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like,
you say those things, and I felt that same way about the DC stuff. That you could see the emotion coming out, and like the writing, and that some of the people
I will fight you on that. Like the first like 3 pages with the wife's dying or the mom's dying, they're just like, I'm so mad, now I'll be stoic. There's no emotion there whatsoever. Every emotional scene is sucked out of. It's like a little child who doesn't know what these emotions are supposed to feel like, trying to write it because they saw a movie where these emotions happen. Like, he saw a movie where someone's wife dies, and now he writes what he thinks a stoic person would do in reaction to that. But they don't feel real. None of these moments feel real, and you don't feel attached to your characters whatsoever. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but I don't know if I could pinpoint exactly why right now.
Yeah, and it's hard to really clarify the differences, but because it's the same writer and a lot of same traits, but like.
I know personally, I'm more forgiving for overwritten dialogue just subconsciously when it's an older style comic book. Like, when I see the older, like, 60s style, I, like, just naturally, I think, suspend more of my disbelief, where when I see modern inking and modern coloring, it seems more tonally jarring to me.
Yeah,
that's possible. That's part of it too.
Yeah, speaking of, like, this next Spider-Man story we're going to get into, at least this first issue is like awfully overwrought with the same dialogue over and over and over again. It was driving me nuts when I was reading it.
So now this is written right about the same time. This is late 65 into early 66. We're doing Amazing Spider-Man 31 through 33 by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. This is If This Be My Destiny.
Yeah, so if Beat My Destiny still opens up with Stanley. Spider-Man, it's written by Stanley and Steve Ditko, by the way. So it opens with Spider-Man fighting gas mask purple dudes trying to thwart a robbery at the pier. And these purple dudes are all saying they work for the Master Planner.
So much they say that. They're like, we shall do as the Master Planner orders.
Yeah.
It's because it's trying to build up like I wonder who he is.
I think they've been referencing the Master Planner for a couple of issues up to this point, if I recall.
Yeah, so Spider-Man fights them on their escape helicopter, but he gets gassed. And he's still fighting them as they're gassing him. He's really
I love how
gassed.
none of these guys have actual guns. Like, they only have gas. So when it doesn't work, they're just like, shoot more gas.
Spray more!
I think that might be because of comics code. I think they weren't allowed to
Yeah.
have guns.
Oh.
This was the era where comics had to be for babies.
Yeah.
The helicopter crashes, but they have an underwater base, so they swim away while Spider-Man's unaware.
Well, even this, but Spider-Man finds out because he goes, I know they're like henchmen and they're robbers, but I can't let them die. And he swims back down to the helicopter and they're gone.
So he goes back home and he has to prepare for college because this was like right after Peter graduated high school and he's going to college.
Which I just want to say is a cool thing to have happen. Being like, hey, he's not perpetually in high school. Like, he has to move on.
He's only in high school for like 25 issues.
Yeah, and that's one other thing what Stanley did. Like, he got Reed married. He got Peter to graduate high school. Like, he actually has characters to grow up, which no one at the time did. Like,
yeah, instead of like the Superman Lois Lane, like, will they or won't they for like 40 years?
Yeah.
People still don't do that. There's more character development like in Stan Lee's era in Marvel than like they keep regressing Peter to like Stan Lee status quo.
Yes, like now everyone's like, Peter has to be in high school. That's the true Peter Parker. So he goes to orientation, and when he gets home again, Amy passes out, and Peter calls the doctor, who sends her to a hospital. And during his first day of school, this is also the first appearance of Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn.
Oh, is it the first appearance of him?
Yeah, very first appearance. And this is why I love Spider-Man. Like, I'm going to just fucking say it right now. So, like, Peter's supporting cast this time was just J. Jonah Jameson, Betty Brant, who was J. Jonah Jameson's secretary. All she's in the movies and, like, most media is just J. Jonah Jameson's secretary. But in the comics, she was Peter Parker's first love interest. She was an old woman that Peter Parker fell in love with. And another character was Foswell, a former villain who Peter Parker, Spider-Man busted. And after he came out of prison, Foswell became like J. Jonah Jameson's underground snitch kind of guy as Patch. These characters never appear in anything.
And Flash Thompson, his bully.
Yeah, and Flash Thompson's also a minor character in movies and stuff. And that just shows you how diverse Peter Parker's like stories are. Like, it took him until now to get the iconic characters that everyone knows. And he had like 25 issues with great characters that were memorable. Peter Parker as a character has such a surplus of great supporting characters and so many great ongoing stories that he can like discard them. Characters that, if it was like Batman will kill to have supporting characters this good. but like,
what about Alfred? Huh? Checkmate.
I think the argument there is that with Batman, if you get rid of any of the supporting characters, it leaves a hole. Whereas Peter Parker has such a great ensemble cast that you can pick and choose for movies. Yeah, and like it shows how Peter can live in different contexts, like real people do. Like he goes to the Daily Bugle, and people treat him differently there than they do at college. And here at college, everyone thinks he's an asshole because he's so distraught over Aunt May.
But wait, can I just say how much this college depiction looks like high school? Like they're like really like in a high school setting. It seems like where it's like the jocks are like, "Hey, you nerd," and bullying him.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't think this happens in college.
Well, for what it's worth, the jock that starts bullying him is also there for orientation, and it's his high school bully. Yeah. Where he's like, "Hey, Flash," and he's like, "Fuck you, Peter Parker."
Yeah, it's just Stan Lee and his love for bullies in these stories. Oh.
But I have to clarify, because that's a really good point. So Phil's right and kind of wrong, because what happens is Flash Thompson, who is Peter Parker's high school bully, is going to the same college as him. And he goes to Harry Osborn, and Harry Osborn says, "Who's that cool guy? Peter Parker over there, that hip cat, whatever." And Flash Thompson's like, "No, he's a dork." And then basically through Peter's actions, like Harry Osborn was willing, as a cool kid, was willing to hang out with Peter, but through Peter's actions, Harry's like, Flash was right, he's a fucking asshole. Mm-hmm. So it seems like, to me, it seems like there's a mingling of nerds and jocks, but through Peter's actions, he gets moved from his...
Yeah, because Harry's not a jock.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he's not a jock.
He's not a jock. But it's more like, in college, do people go to the science, like the lab and start like bullying people?
This is also the first day of college. This is the closest to high school you can get in college.
That's true.
Also, another thing to toss out, just to show my Spider-Man, they have like Harry's like dicking around, like so pissed off at Peter that he sabotages his science experiment, and like Peter, because the reason why Peter's so distracted is because like he's had no sleep, and he's trying to focus so much on just getting through the day.
It's really his mind's on Aunt May, because every time it shows like a word bubble, it's him thinking about something about Aunt May, like that she's done so much and that he needs to go see her, but he also needs to focus.
Yes, and so what happens is Harry and Gwen set up a thing where they sabotage Peter's science experiment, and Peter's science teacher, Dr. Warren, shows up and he says, "Hey, Peter, you didn't expect you're supposed to. That's stop making all these radical Dr. Frankenstein experiments and breaking our equipment." And I just want to bring it up that Dr. Warren, this guy becomes...
Oh my god, Sly, don't even, please.
No, what?
He becomes a supervillain called the Jackal. He goes insane.
Oh my god.
He's the one that gives Peter 1,000 clones.
Yes. I bring it up because only comics do this. It's the only medium where you have a minor character just show up randomly in the panel, and he becomes a character later on. Because
I was gonna say how funny it is that like it starts with like the three people like talking about him in college, and it's like, okay, you have Gwen Stacy, his love interest later on, and then you have one guy that becomes the Green Goblin and the other guy that becomes Venom. It's just funny that there's just
Flash Thompson becomes Venom?
Flash Thompson does become Venom.
Yeah, there's just no one that's like, I will never become a supervillain. Yeah.
Well, that's one problem with comics is eventually they do too much of that. But like,
yeah,
it's because they always
forever.
want to be able to use the old name. So they're like, we need a villain. What if it was the cashier who gave Peter his cash back then?
But the way they did, at least Flash Thompson was a military marine, and the military got the symbiote, and they gave the Venom symbiote to Flash Thompson.
That also happened like 40
No, but it's
years
more
ago.
like the coincidence that all these people that know each other all happen to get these powers, you know.
Or is it that by associating yourself with a superhero, you get wrapped up into a larger narrative?
No.
If it was, that would be cool, but I think it's like the lightning thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and that's one problem with like modern comics is I think modern comics should have more regular people, and I don't think
I agree. So yeah, all of Spider-Man's friends that will eventually become his friends keep like inviting him places, and he's like, "Fuck you, I'm leaving, bye."
Yeah, they're not that bad bullies. Like they pull a prank on him, but then afterwards they're like, we should invite him out for coke. They're gonna do some cocaine, and they really do try to like go out and hang out with him after. But then he keeps ignoring them, and they're like, wow, he's really so self-centered. He doesn't care about other people. And eventually the whole college starts talking about how much of an asshole he is.
Yeah, and Phil's joking. I mean, like Coke's like back in the old days getting a Coke with the gal. And also, they do keep giving him every opportunity. He keeps like brushing them off.
And it's like he's just so preoccupied with Aunt May. And he's even like, I need to go make money to pay for the medical bills. So I'm going to go take pictures of Spider-Man fighting crime. But he can't find any crimes. And he's like, damn, I wish people were getting mugged.
Yeah, so then Foswell, a.k.a. Patches, is on the streets. Like he hears through the down low that basically a heist is going down, but he doesn't know who to go with the information. So he goes to Spider-Man, and Spider-Man goes and busts up the heist, and that leads. And so he beats up that heist, but it goes into number 32, where we find out after all this build-up over who's the master plan, they just reveal like on the first page like it's Dr. Octopus.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting though is to us this might sound trite, but like Doc Ock is still a relatively newish character at this point, because so is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like how many Doc Ock stories were here before this? 3 or 4 maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if this was his reveal, because I'm like, okay, underwater base, Dr. Octopus, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
actually,
no.
I didn't think about that.
That's actually really clever if that's what the goal was. But yeah, Doctor Octopus. This is like one of the best like Doctor Octopus stories, by the way. Like it really put him on the more higher level of importance. Like he was this guy running his crime spree for issues and issues.
And it's worth noting that I Master Planner is kind of a stupid name, and like he's actually not that great of a planner, but he in all these heists they are like pretty well orchestrated. Like he obviously has some kind of brain. He's not just like go fight like
Yeah.
Yeah, like we said, like he has a helicopter, but as the helicopter's crashing, they're basically while Spider-Man paying attention, they're having the
scuba teams go pick them up.
Yeah,
and like it is pretty well organized.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so just to briefly mention the Betty Brant stuff, Betty Brant, her brother was killed by mobsters. He was a mobster and got killed by mobsters. So this is right at the time where her relationship with Peter started breaking apart because Spider-Man failed to save her brother from mobsters, and also Spider-Man lives a violent life himself, and she started dating Peter Parker because she thought he was a nerdy, boring dork that she could like settle down with, and
that he'd stay out of trouble.
Yeah, so but Peter, so like now Peter is like acting like a dick to her on purpose because he wants to push her away from him and not hurt her. Well, because like if she finds out he's Spider-Man, all she's gonna do is like now she knows he's Spider-Man and she's not gonna be with him probably anyway. So why even tell her? Just make her leave him anyway. And so she basically pushes her away and acts like a dick to her future fiance.
Yeah, he really acts like a piece of shit to her, and like the whole time he's thinking to himself, like this is where I think the overwriting works for me, because he's yelling like mean things to her at the same time we see his inner monologue that's like, I hate to do this, like this breaks my heart, but it's the only way to keep her safe.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, right after that, he like storms out and he's like really like defeated about it. And then he goes to the hospital to visit Aunt May, and they find out that she's dying from radioactive poisoning from a blood transfusion that Peter gave her.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's Mary Jane all over again.
Oh yeah,
radioactive cum.
Yeah, but yeah, so she's dying because of his radioactive blood, and that's important because now it's tied to Peter Parker's guilt over Uncle Ben, because Uncle Ben died because of his inaction, and now he says now Aunt May's gonna die because of me, and like the two people in my life that like I cared about, like with all my powers, I couldn't save either of them, and now it's gonna happen again. I can't stop it. So he goes crazy trying to find a way to see if he could cure her. And he goes to Dr. Connors, and now, sorry for all this backstory, but this is why I think this story's really cool. He goes to meet Dr. Connors, who, if you watch the movies, he was his professor in the movies. But in the comics, he was the Lizard. Oh, no, he was the Lizard in the reboot, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I didn't know who any of these people were.
And so this was he was the Lizard, and Spider-Man cured him. And now he became kind of like a character Peter would call upon for science help every once in a while.
Which I was thinking about how sad it is, because like he eventually turns into the Lizard later,
Yes.
right? Like
Well, he was already the Lizard at this point.
Yes.
But I mean, like right here, he turned into like a good man after this, which I was like, oh, this is cool, because you see so infrequently villains turn good guys, like Patches or whoever.
Vegeta.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that?
If you want to go really, really sad, what happens eventually is he takes on the full traits of a lizard and eats his family.
Oh my! Oh
Yeah.
no!
Is that before or after the radioactive cum?
That's after I
Was that when Mark Millar got a hold of Spider-Man?
So, but even this, like, even if you don't know that he's the Lizard, he's still he's got one arm, and he's like you were there for me when I needed you, Spider-Man. I'll do anything I can to help your friend.
Yeah.
And like it's like, especially when you were talking about like villains or like 0 to 100, he was a villain. He was the Lizard at this point, but Spider-Man saved him, and now he's trying to redeem himself, and he's like, you were there for me, I will be there for you. And that's a much more fleshed out character than like any villain at this point.
Yeah. So Spider-Man, Peter Parker has to give up his lab equipment, all of his lab equipment, in order to pay for Dr. Connors'
This panel like broke my heart. He's selling his microscope. He's selling all his stuff to a pawn shop,
Yeah.
so he could afford medicine. If only we had universal health care.
Yeah.
Right.
But so Connors is like, okay, we have this potential thing that could help her. This ISO, whatever the fuck, ISO 36. And I need to order it because it's a very special order, and it costs a lot of money, so Peter has to do all this to get the money. And Dr. Octopus finds out that ISO 36 is coming into New York. He's like, I gotta steal it. So he stages a heist to steal it from the escort.
I love that the heist is the goons come up, they punch this guy in the back of the head, just grab his thing and run away.
I also love how Peter Parker is like looking for where they have the isotope, and he spends so much time like beating up people trying to get information, going crazy, and he just finds it himself. Like no one helps him.
Well, a lot of this story is Peter just desperately like beating up anyone that's in his way.
Yeah, I think that's just to show Peter's desperation. Like, this is not usually how he acts. Like, and people say like he's fucking crazy. Like he's smashing buildings and stuff.
Yeah, he just busts into like these places where gangsters hang out, and he just starts throwing cars and stuff, and they're like, "Holy fuck, what is happening?"
And while this is happening, we're intercut with scenes of Aunt May slipping into a coma, and the doctor saying it's getting worse. And like, I think this is really well paced.
I think so too.
But yeah, he does find the thing on his own. He finds a abandoned warehouse and a secret panel under the floor. He fights all of the Master Planner's goons, and he finds a secret tunnel leading to the underground, the underwater portion of the base. And that's where he finally meets Dr. Octopus, and Dr. Octopus is like, oh, only I could have orchestrated this plan, Spider-Man, and they start fighting.
Again, his rage really comes through in all these panels. I feel like
Yeah.
like Dr. Octopus is doing his like typical supervillain thing. He's like, yes, I'm so smart. I'm taking nuclear stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna fuck can kill you to save Aunt May. And then at some point, Dr. Octopus is like, I have to get out of here.
Yeah, he's like, I never saw him fly like that. He's like a tiger, and Peter just starts smashing the surroundings, and that's what eventually causes his downfall because he breaks the pillars and the whole roof starts coming down on both of them.
And they're in an underwater base. So
Yes.
It's just, yeah.
The roof starts caving in on them, and a giant metallic structure collapses onto Peter.
Giant machine?
Giant machine.
A Ditko machine.
Yeah, and basically Peter is like, he's already trapped in the rubble as the machine's coming down on him, so all he can do is contort himself so it doesn't completely crush his head fully. But now he's completely stuck between all this rubble and this giant machine now, as the roof is leaking water, and Isotope is just out of reach, and he's not thinking like, I failed, like I can't lift this giant, huge-ass machine off me, and this rubble, I can't do it. And he's thinking to himself like, I haven't slept for literally days, and I'm out of it. Like I've been on the rampage, and like I have no more energy in it. And it cuts to everything's going on with Dr. Connor's waiting for the Isotope, and May dying in the hospital, saying, and basically it's like, oh, what will happen? Will Peter be able to get out of here? Like what's going to happen? And
as she goes into the coma, the last thing she says is Peter.
Yeah, and this is one of the best like '60s like cliffhangers ever, leading into the final chapter, issue 33.
So, not to get ahead of my judgment of this, but I think this is my favorite Spider-Man issue of all time.
Well, you're not the only one that thinks that way.
Yeah.
This gets referenced in Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, you will see in a second.
Spoilers.
Yeah.
So, it starts with him buried under the rubble as the water floods the room. And I just want to read his dialogue. So, I guess it's a monologue. So, he sees the serum just out of reach and goes, I failed. Just now, when it counted the most, I failed. But I can't give up. I must keep trying. I must. I've got to try to free myself, no matter how impossible it seems. And lifting is the only way, the only way. Ugh, I can't. So exhausted after all that fighting. I feel so weak. It's lying there just beyond reach as though mocking me, taunting me. And then the ghosts of Aunt May and Uncle Ben, like their heads, just appear before him. It's the one thing, the only thing that may save Aunt May, and I can't bring it to her. If she doesn't make it, it'll be my fault, just the way I'll always blame myself for what happened to Uncle Ben. The two people in all the world who've been kindest to me. I can't fail again. It can't happen a second time. I won't let it. I won't. No matter what the odds, no matter what the cost, I'll get that serum to Aunt May, and maybe then I'll no longer be haunted by the memory of Uncle Ben. Within my body is the strength of many men, and now I've got to call on all that strength, all the power that I possess.
As this is happening, he starts lifting the machine,
Yes.
and the panels start very small, and they start getting wider and wider as he exerts more and more strength.
Yeah. And they're taking up more and more of the page. I must prove equal to the task. I must be worthy of that strength, or else I don't deserve it. The weight is unbearable. Every muscle aches. My head, it's spinning. Everything beginning to whirl around the strain. It's unbearable. And we see the ceiling cracking. And, the crack in the ceiling, it's growing wider, getting bitter every second. I'll never make it. I can't. No, I dare not give up now. If I close my eyes, I'll go under. Must stay awake. Must clear my head. Keep trying. I'll do it, Aunt May. I won't fail you. No matter what, I won't fail. Anyone can win a fight when the odds are easy. It's when the going's tough, when there seems to be no chance. That's when it counts. Everything going black, my head aching. Hold on, I must hold on. It's moving, can't stop now, last chance. Must keep the momentum more, just a little more. And he throws the machine off him. I did it. I'm free. In a full page.
Full page, yes.
If you like that scene, Ryan, there's the show Gurren Lagann is basically that scene in show form. Like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
So I would, if you like that style, that show is definitely worth watching.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
It is very much that, but that's what makes it seem so cool. It's like if you know, like that's one thing that makes it more interesting than like Superman, or even if like any other character was in this situation. Because Spider-Man is really strong, but like not lift a giant machine like off himself strong. So
like this is like a mother like lifting a car to save her child's strength here. It's not like normal.
Yeah.
And then, like, on his way out, he has the Isotope and a bunch of, like, a dozen, like, henchmen jump on him.
And you should mention first that, like, he's so tired, like, he's taking every chance to get any rest. When the water starts coming in, he basically goes to the current saying, I gotta use this current just to get myself some rest.
And when they start beating him up, he lays there and lets them beat him so he can get some energy back. Like, he's just like, I'm probably the first person to ever let himself get beat up to regain energy.
Yeah, and the thing that I love about the scene is it's, like, close-ups on him, and he's like, I'm not gonna fall, I'm not. Aunt May's counting on me. A man may lose. A man may be defeated, but I won't give up. I won't. And then it zooms out, and everyone's unconscious, and he's just, like, dizzy and swinging punches anyway.
Yeah. It was pretty cool.
And then he, like, stumbles out, and he somehow makes it to Dr. Connors. And, like, every panel, it looks like he's about to just pass
He, like, broke
out.
his leg or something. Or he keeps saying, my bones aren't broken, but his bones are fucking broken.
Yeah. And he makes it to the hospital with the serum that he even tested on his own blood first. And he delivers the serum to Aunt May. She wakes up. He gives the story to Foswell outside, sells J. Jonah Jameson all the pictures.
I should mention really quickly that J. Jonah Jameson, because like he's very confident, saying, "I want $200 for each pictures for each picture, or else I'm not doing it." And J. Jonah Jameson is like, "What's with Peter now? He seems such a milquetoast." And
He literally calls him milquetoast.
Yes, and Peter also goes to Betty Brand, and he's basically just like, I'm here. I have a violent lifestyle. I have to fight people to get these pictures. I'm sorry, Betty." And Betty's basically like, she basically like, "I lost him. Like, I can't live." And she basically freaks out over this. So it's like the end of Peter and Betty's relationship here too. Like in the middle of this other story, you end this other story arc.
Yeah, and he's alongside Aunt May as she wakes up, and she's like, everyone's so happy. She made this miraculous recovery, and then as he walks away to let her get some rest, she falls back asleep, and she has a big smile on her face, and they see Peter Parker walking away happy outside the window. It's like one of the only Spider-Man issues that ends happy.
It's not just like they walks away happy. I think there's a bittersweet irony to it in that the doctor's like, Peter Parker's a nice boy. He's sincere, well-mannered, devoted to his aunt. And he's like, why can't more people look up to him and not Spider-Man, who's a reckless thrill seeker? Which I think is like, that's a really interesting idea. Because it's like the normal people are better than the superheroes really as characters, but it's also showing you that the superheroes are normal people beneath all of their powers.
Yeah, because the superheroes who saved Aunt May, it's not Peter Parker.
That's true.
Or I mean, they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Spoilers.
that's the dichotomy.
No, Peter Parker's Spider-Man.
What?
Man.
All right, so now let's get into one of the few really good standalone Stan Lee stories, Silver Surfer #5.
Yeah, and who shall mourn for him from April 1969?
Yeah,
This was a great issue.
we get some great Stan Lee in here where it starts with the Fantastic Four, like then alarms going off, and the things in the shower. He's asking, "Hey, Stretcho, ain't that the alarm bell?" And he's like, Reed Richards is like, "You're right, Ben." And there's like the side blurb that's like, "No, true believer, we didn't put a wrong cover on the Fantastic Four magazine." Like, only you'll realize what they have to do with the stories.
Yeah, very Stanley style editor's notes. Like, don't worry.
Oh, and for what it's worth, this is John Buscema, who we mentioned before. He did which one? He did the Batman one?
The Superman one.
He did the Superman one of the Just Imagines with Stan Lee.
Yeah. And also, we should mention the reason why, Jack Kirby created the Silver Surfer now. Stan Lee picked John Buscema. Like, and he also made a rule saying only he could write Silver Surfer. So he basically stole Jack Kirby's creation in a way, but which is probably why Jack Kirby hates him. But but the reason why he did it was because he wanted someone like John Buscema, who he felt could capture Silver Surfer's humanity more. And
Steve Buscemi, right?
Steve Buscemi. And that's one thing very important about his Silver Surfer run is almost every page of Silver Surfer's Stanley Silver Surfer, he looks like he's in fucking agony because he's so sad over the fact he's trapped on Earth with all these monkeys around him.
Yeah.
I really like John Buscema's art here, and I was actually surprised to recall that he did the Superman stuff because I was like, he was much better back then, much like Stan Lee.
I think a lot of like 60s artists, I don't think they're helped. First of all, I don't think they're helped by modern coloring. I think modern coloring competes with their inking a lot. But also a lot of them just get older, and like a good example is Gene Colan. Like if you see a lot of his later stuff, like he's like can barely see by the time he passed away. So like you just get older and your eyesight goes away and your hands like get less dexterous. So like it happens.
So what happens here is Silver Surfer comes through and he steals a space scrambler, and what he's trying to do is he's basically locked into like our solar system and he can't get out, so he flies to the edge where a barrier is and he's trying to blast it because he wants to leave and surf through space.
Yeah, because Galactus punished him and trapped him on Earth.
Yep. Instead, Reed's space scrambler blows up, and he, like, for a brief moment, he thinks that he sees Shalabal, who's his beloved.
His love from back from his own planet. So and that's one thing that happens a lot in Stanley's run is every issue is him saying, "I wish I had my love here," and it's him pining for her. And it's like, thankfully, it's the only bit of that we get here.
Yeah. So he passes out and he wakes up inside of this man's house, who is Albie Harper. He's a black physicist.
Yeah.
And he's basically lets him know that he can try and help research how to break the barrier, but it's going to need a lot of money, obviously, because he's going to need like a lot of equipment and stuff.
Yeah. When the space scrambler exploded and Silver Surfer fell to Earth, he found him and brought him home and like cared for him.
Yeah.
Al Harper did. And so the Silver Surfer's like, you know what? If it's money you need, I'll go get it. And this is where I was like, okay, he's gonna clearly go rob someone.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, okay, you're Silver Surfer. You just go to the bank and take the money.
Spoilers.
So he's walking around, and
In disguise, he gets a disguise, so he's like his trench coat and hat, and he's like, but he still has a white face.
Yeah, no, yeah. Basically, a guy who's literally silver walking in. He's like, well, he has a hat and trench coat. This is a normal man.
Well, it's not like the disguise fools anybody.
which
I know.
I liked a lot of this, like this part of the issue a lot, because I'm always so much more down to like take superheroes or supervillains and put them in like normal situations. I just want to see what like they're thinking from time to time, like how they interact with normal people. Because a girl drops a doll and he gives it to her, and the mother's afraid. And she says, "That strange white face, come along, Sally." And then Surfer thinks to himself, "Poor pathetic creatures, so riddled with fear, with gnawing disgust. What monumental irony that they who rule a planet should be so insecure." And I just like seeing it in what ways he's like very condescending to all of humanity.
It's also very important to for context. So Al Harper talks about how like people kind of mock him, don't take him seriously.
That people don't take Al Harper seriously.
Yeah, Al Harper seriously, but it's important because Silver Surfer is in his series. This whole series about how he's an outsider among humanity. No one trusts him because he's basically this god being on Earth. Like the military fears him, and like every other story, like. This Stanley kind of goes overboard. Like Silver Surfer never gets any supporting cast members. Everyone he meets always dies or something bad happens to them. Everyone what always happens is his villains find a way to make him look like the bad guy. Like his first villains were a group of invisible aliens, and they're invading Manhattan. So Silver has to fight them and stop their ships, but they're invisible, so it looks like Silver Surfer's blowing up Manhattan. And everyone's like, "Oh my God, Silver Surfer's a fucking terrorist." And then another story was. He meets Frankenstein's heir, and the Frankenstein's heir wants to recreate Silver Surfer. So he creates a Silver Surfer clone, and Silver Surfer's clone tries to take over the world. And everyone's like, "Wow, Silver Surfer's like the worst person ever. Like, you have to kill a Silver Surfer."
I mean, I think even if he wasn't doing that stuff, a guy flying around on a surfboard who could just blow shit up with his mind or whatever, like I think the world would fear him.
Also, he was the herald of the World Eater.
Yeah.
I think everyone would actually fear him and hate him with good reason. Like, or maybe not hate with good reason, but like, how could you not have this one guy who can kill everyone? Like, how would you not fear him?
Yeah.
So, so this one guy with all this power that everyone should fear goes to the employment agency because he's unemployed. Yeah. And he looks to go get a job and gets yelled at for not having references, social security card, a home address, and
Or not being part of a union.
it has a montage where it's just people, different employers like denying him because it's like you can't do like anything. You obviously can't work here. Look at you. And so that's when he decides it's nighttime, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to get that money. I'm just going to go pursue the most obvious course. And this is when he starts doing, I don't know what Silver Surfer's power is, so I was just watching this, and he has
He's the power cosmic.
He has cosmic everything. So he's like, a simple cosmic spark will gain entrance. A cosmic touch can open any door, and then he can use cosmic haze on people to make them forget. Like, he starts stealing all this money, and then he's like, you know what, I am so driven by despair that I would steal what is not mine to escape the mad, unthinking humans. Must I descend to their own lawless level? And a cop shows up and he's like, "Go to sleep. You forgot everything that happened here." And he returns the money.
Silver Surfer says to the cop. The cop doesn't say to Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer tells the cop, "Go to sleep. You saw nothing." And power cosmic, as Ryan calls it, is basically space magic. Like,
I don't call it that. Stan Lee calls it that.
But as he called it, you called it in that.
Quote Ryan Lynch: Jack Kirby sucks, and he also coined the term power cosmic.
And it's just that it's a funny ability because it's like cosmic everything. It reminds me of the bonus episode we did with superpowers.
Yeah.
So he hears howling, and it's this man that got beat up in an alley, and he asks him what's wrong, and he says, "My wife, she can't pay the doctor bills, and I swore off gambling, but now that I need to pay the bills, I had to go back and gamble, and it was a crooked house, the dice were fixed, and they basically were trying to squeeze him out of his money, and now he can't pay back his loans." So Silver Surfer goes here, and of course he can just like cosmic roll the dice.
I do believe he can control like the molecules and stuff. Like, that's how it works. So.
Yeah, it's just funny. Everything's cosmic with him.
Well, they see, unlike Silver Age, like Superman, Silver Surfer he's built as the super OP character intentionally so that he is always disconnected from this like backwoods planet that he's stuck on.
Yeah.
Like he's supposed to view us all as ants.
And also, very importantly, very rarely is the threat to him physical. Like his problem is always like everyone hates him. So like he can his whole thing is never how I beat this threat. It's just that what will happen after I beat this threat, basically.
Yep. Speaking of it getting physical, he takes all the money from the house and he goes out in an alley, and a bunch of people like mobsters jump him and start beating him up to take the money.
And he
back.
lets them. He's like, I just want to see how savage humans
Yeah,
can
it's
be,
like,
so I'm going to let them keep this
Are
shit
they
out of
gonna
me.
try and kill me? Like, is this really what they're gonna do?
He said, I have not resisted in order to learn the extent of their savagery and to think they call themselves human.
Yeah, and then the guy that's owed the money, the gambler, comes out and tries to
The
like,
bum
stop
that I
him.
first met, the guy got beaten up.
Yeah, and then they try and hit him with their car, but Silver Surfer decides that's enough, and he stops it. He flings their car up in the air and slams it into the ground. I like, there's just one word bubble of, they shall live, for I did cushion their fall, when the last panels, the car's like crushed into, like, completely flattened. It's like, yeah. Okay.
I will say I always love the way Silver Surfer talks, especially when he gets his shit kicked out of him for a while, and then he finally gets mad. He says, "Since you believe in naught but force, then I shall show you force, such as none you have ever seen."
And even like there's so many little lines that really stand out to me that like is why I think Stan Lee's a good writer. It's like he gives the bum a bunch of money. And he's like, accept the share of the money which I have received. And he says, you're giving it to me for nothing? He goes, no, quite the contrary. I give it to you because you're a fellow being who is in need. And like, that's a good-ass line.
So after that, he hops onto his flying
Silver
board.
Surfer leaves.
Yep, and he returns home to Al Harper to give...
Who only takes like 4 days to make this space machine.
Yes.
Like, it's like minutes,
Which is
hours,
it's
even
the,
days.
the stupid like comic thing of when you're a scientist, you can like literally create things the world has never seen before.
Yeah, in days.
Without even a crew, without even having to have trouble getting equipment, like
Yeah,
come
it's
on,
just him in a cabin, basically.
without even like having prototypes.
Yeah,
or
he's a
anything.
physicist and an engineer. That's what all scientists are. It reminded me when people were talking about Peter Parker, like they was mixing chemicals. It's like, oh, he's a chemist, but no, he's like, oh, I'm a scientist. Like that's what he's studying in college.
I'm a science, yeah. And this guy specifically says, I
physicist.
specialize in research,
Yeah.
and yet he's not. He doesn't actually. He can make anything.
We joked about pull yourself by your bootstraps, but 60s Stanley, maybe even probably. I know a lot of super scientists before that too. There's a very Randy and Superman kind of quality to them, like, and it's very translated to the films where, like, Tony Stark in Iron Man 2 created his own element. They're like human beings by themselves. Like, even a crew of scientists helping them, they can create elements out of nothing.
Yeah. So he creates this gun and he attaches it to Silver Surfer that will allow him to fool the gate into thinking
Wait, we have made elements, right?
that yeah.
But Tony Stark did it himself in like the course of like a montage.
I see
We
what
haven't
you're
just sat there to our own devices and been like, I'll make an element.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Or a useful element. So Silver Surfer takes this weapon that he has to power himself because he's a huge battery, and he starts trying to get through the barrier. And then this is where the story like turns in a weird direction for me, because it becomes about this guy called the Stranger, who basically he had visited Earth before to see the X-Men. And he's like, he thought the Earthlings were so beneath him. He's like, they're just a scourge on the universe. If they end up going out into the solar system and explore space, they're gonna pretty much poison it. They're a blight. So I'm gonna.
True facts. This guy's
yeah.
actually the true hero of the story.
we were going to originally at one point do a series focused on the Stranger because he's basically humanity must die, the story, and it's always different characters reacting to him. So the first story was mutants. Mutants was by the X-Men, and Magneto was like, mutants are the next stage of evolution. Then Stranger's like, you guys suck, mutants are shit. I'm the Stranger, fuck you. And he just takes Magneto and teleports him away. And then he meets the Hulk, and then he uses the Hulk as engine of destruction. Now this story is more a direct moral battle. He's like, humanity's garbage. You know it's garbage. Let's kill it all. Like, kill like a cancer. And stop from spreading the universe. And Silver Surfer's like, no, there's good in humanity. And Doctor Strange and the Stranger's like, fuck you, you're a fool.
It's basically like Ryan versus Sly here. When they
I was just gonna say, if you want to know the behind the scenes of our other show, Oops, I Talk Politics, I'm Silver Surfer who's like, maybe humanity's the worst, and then the Stranger Sly comes over and he's like, humanity must die, and I'm like, wait, no, it's good. I'm
gonna use a null life bomb and eliminate all life on it.
Yeah, so he puts his bomb onto Earth and says, "Good luck finding it, asshole."
I wish, for such a cosmic being that's so powerful who can just fly around the universe. I wish he didn't just look like a guy with a goatee and a mustache. Like, if he didn't look like such a human, it would make it have more weight. I feel like.
Yeah, which is always the problem with extraterrestrial threats and celestial beings is whenever they look like way too human when they're espousing non-human beliefs or even superhuman beliefs.
At least Silver Surfer is kind of weird. Like, this guy literally is just a guy in space.
Yeah,
I believe the stranger came before Galactus. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
So he was like a really early Jack Kirby creation.
He debuted in X-Men 11. That's pretty early.
Yeah, so Jack Kirby got more out there with his designs as time went on. Like, even if you don't like New God stuff, that's why I defend the New God stuff, because at least it looks very alien. This guy just looks like a superhero. Like, it could be his own superhero. Like, he's wearing like tights and stuff.
Yeah.
So like he doesn't even look sufficiently out there. And I do think the Stranger's cool in concept and design. Like, I always liked him as a foil for other characters, but his design kind of sucks. And in fact, the coolest he ever was in his first appearance when everyone still thought he was a human being, and he reveals his costume, and he's like, "I have a red and green costume, surprise!" And that's when he's like, "It's kind of lame."
Yeah. So Silver Surfer goes and he has to confront the Stranger while he gets Al Harper. He's like, "Hey, you need to go find this bomb while I'm busy talking to this guy." I do like it shows that Surfer's humanity, that he came back to Earth, that he turned away from the barrier. And he's like, I do want to save these people. Like, I don't hate them that much.
It's important to know he doesn't tell Harper first to go get the bomb right away. He says, so anyway, it could be under his plan. We have to get people to look for it. So he goes to the police, he goes to FBI, he goes to CIA. Everyone's like, "You're fucking crazy." You think
I love how they talk to Al Harper and they're like, "What, next you're going to say there's flying saucers?" It's like, they know about the Silver Surfer, right? Like, they know aliens exist.
Yeah, it's Phil's old problem with people not believing in the supernatural, and it's shown itself.
For the record, we have a whole group of our population thinks the Earth is flat. I refuse to believe that any evidence will sway humanity anymore.
Oh, by the way, but just to defend Ryan, in the issue right before the Fantastic Four issue we just read, they actually revealed that J. Jonah Jameson was writing a newspaper, fake news, hoax. The Rothschilds were basically used that as holograms to make a state Galactus attack. Like, there are Alex Jones types, aka
But
J. Jonah Jameson.
the problem is that, like, it's like everyone in positions of power is always the Alex Jones type.
Phil,
the police, the CIA,
Trump,
and the FBI
Trump won our election, Phil. Make it happen.
Oh no. Okay. Anyway, so Al Harper starts going around and looking after taking a ride on Silver Surfer's board, and
he makes his like bomb detector or something. It detects unearthly elements.
And a bunch of people are like, that bot, this guy with a beeping thing on his chest is really. I don't know about that.
Al Harper's by himself now. Like, Silver Surfer left him already.
Yeah, because Silver Surfer's fighting the Stranger, and then that's when they're having their conversation about, like, I think they should be saved, and he's like, "No, I'll squash you because they suck."
Yeah, and meanwhile, Al Harper is like walking up a beeping thing, and people are like, "What's that beeping thing? Are you a terrorist? Are you working with that giant alien in the city right now?"
They all start to jump him. He starts to beat him up. He gets into a car and like starts driving away.
And it's a very Stanley thing where every person trying to do the selfless heroic thing has to get shit on by the people. So Al Harper is like this heroic man, and the people are fighting him, saying, "Stop trying to save us, you piece of shit! Fuck you!"
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think people would if some of those guys walking around with a beeping thing on his chest.
They would, yeah.
Yeah, but it's weird that like they don't even call the cops. It's like, I'm gonna take it upon myself to beat the shit out of him.
The thing is, they go up to him and they're like, "What is that?" And he's like, I can't tell you. I can't tell you." Like, he doesn't answer them.
No, he does say it detects bombs from outer space.
And that's another thing. No one will believe him. Like, people really wait to everyone, and no one believed him about the giant spaceman. And
that's
true.
Really
believe he has a way to find the giant spaceman's bomb.
So he does find it, and it's within a rock. He breaks the rock open, and he has to deactivate it. And the Stranger revealed earlier to Silver Surfer that when it gets deactivated, there's a trap on it that will kill the person who deactivates it. So Al Harper deactivates it, a vapor comes out and basically kills him.
And he can tell that it's booby-trapped, but he keeps deactivating it anyway.
I do like how he says, anything that can explode, I can disarm, because I'm science. Even though it's Spaceman's bomb.
Like he said, it's still just a bomb at the end of the day. No,
but the Stranger does intentionally make this bomb to test humanity. Is anyone altruistic enough to sacrifice themselves?
Because he hid it in a rock.
He doesn't say that, though.
He does. He says... He says
no. It's kind of a mix of both. the fact that Al Harper does sacrifice himself does prove to a stranger that humanity is worth saving.
Yeah, he didn't. If he wanted it as a test, he would put it in the middle of Manhattan or something
That's
and say,
true.
"Is anyone
That's
willing
true.
to kill themselves
Yeah,
for
so
this?"
it was originally planned to kill humanity, but the fact
Yeah, he
that
says the hidden bomb is neutralized.
Okay,
The
fine,
hidden
I was
test
wrong.
bomb.
Okay, so you think Jack Kirby sucks? You you coined this shitty phrase, cosmic whatever.
He thinks terrorists plant bombs to test humanity.
Especially hidden bombs.
So anyway, the stranger's like, okay, I once again had misjudged the supremely savage yet strangely selfish human race. And he says, I'm gonna leave you as I found you, Silver Surfer, and I will undo all the damage I wrought. And he leaves. I'm like, this guy's kind of just an asshole. If one person just needed to sacrifice themselves for the human race.
It's really like a Sodom and Gomorrah thing here, where he's like, everyone's shit, but this one guy isn't shit. So
it's very much Sodom and Gomorrah. It's supposed to be also like, first of all, Sodom and Gomorrah proves that we believe in humanity that godlike beings will do this.
Yeah.
Like they will be so bombastic because broke proclamation saying this place, this civilization is so evil, no one will literally be good. That's single.
Yeah, it's proof by contrapositive. He says everyone's scum, and it's like, well, this one person's not scum, so therefore not everyone is scum.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I would still have blown up humanity, I think, because I you know, it's like
just to be safe.
you watch them beat the shit out of this nice guy. like the
true.
other humans all hated the good guy, so maybe they do deserve to die.
Anyway, the story concludes with the people that were chasing Al suddenly forgot why they were doing all of this, and instead they find a dead man's body and they bury it because they're like, man, he would have just lain there for months. I wonder what happened to him.
The stranger basically undid all the damage he did.
So Silver Surfer finds the buried body, and he feels sad that like Al's sacrifice goes unknown and unmourned.
Well, because as the guy's leaving, he says, what's the difference? We all gotta go sooner or later. Who's gonna care about one guy, more or less? Just a nobody.
Okay. One of the random guys says that. Silver Surfer does not say that.
Yes.
And so
Silver Surfer does say, what's different? We all gotta go somewhere later. This guy says that. And
Silver Surfer decides to make a solemn tribute, so he makes an eternal pyre, a flame that will burn forever as long as the earth endures, which I thought was really cool. It's one of those things like I wish I had known about it, like that was within the Marvel pantheon kind of a deal, like a fire just in this one place that burns forever for a man that saved the world.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I wish this I feel like people would have come across this at some point and like worship it or something. Like,
But the
Yeah,
whole point that the whole point that they're making is that nobody gives a shit about this guy.
Yeah.
Like Silver Surfer pays this tribute to him, but like everyone else, he's just a nobody.
yeah, no one gives a shit about him in life. No one gives a shit about him now. Even
Well,
after
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
but
the
this
it's like
fire
the
is
grave of the
burning
unknown
forever.
soldier. Yeah, it's still like something that you go to like revere.
But
I
it's
feel,
a
if you-
metaphor, guys.
Okay, you got it. Whatever.
I think it's just Silver Surfer showing his own tribute that no one else will notice, but it's his own way to give tribute.
It's
to.
gonna burn forever. You gotta notice it.
yes, people will notice this.
It's a burning grave.
I don't know, in the middle of nowhere. Maybe in like the year 2999, they can have a follow.
No, this is a very popular place. This is so populated. This is where the stranger put his test for humanity.
They buried him in a graveyard. Someone's gonna go.
Oh
there
yeah,
at
it's a
some
grave. I thought it
point.
was they buried everybody found it, but they do bury him in an unmarked grave.
Yeah. So that's Stan Lee, the best of his single issue stories in the Spider-Man arc.
Well, I mean, everyone has their different takes, but that's what Sly and I said were the best.
Yeah.
Do you guys see a little bit more why Stan Lee is beloved?
Yes, I really enjoyed these issues, even though I already had read them, and I enjoyed them back then too. I think these are an example of like why comics can be good.
Yes.
I made mention of this before, like in our Divisive Issues chat, where I said I think I enjoyed them about as much as the DC ones.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't get
That is like fucking blasphemy. I don't like revere Stan Lee really, but
Yeah.
I just feel like I feel like these are such higher quality stories than the
Yeah,
DC ones.
They are higher quality stories. The problem with me a lot of times, and I feel like this is with me in comics where I struggle with them, is it's the writing itself. And I do not appreciate Stan Lee as a writer because he is not visually evocative. Like when Ryan was reading the whole segment about Spider-Man lifting up the machine, it's like, that's great, and none of it is, I think, evocative for me because it's not like flowery enough. Like I'm really into stuff that's a lot more like a prettier, like that it evokes some kind of image in your head when it's said, like a lot of Englehart stuff. like he can really like describe colors and emotions and feelings well, whereas Stanley states he's very explicit with what he's saying, where it's like he was feeling despair, he was feeling sad here, and Stanley is good. He has a very diverse vocabulary that he uses. He doesn't use a lot of the same phrases a lot. I mean, other than when, you know, you're Ben Grimm and you're like Bub and Bucko and that kind of stuff. But everyone else has like, he is a good writer, I think. I don't like his prose.
Do you think subject matter wise though, these are just as equally as interesting as the other ones? As the just imagine
Like plot versus dialogue.
Yeah. Like I'd say these are better. These are more interesting. Like I really, the Silver Surfer story is my favorite one for like, I do like the idea of like the unmourned man and what he has to go through. Whereas like there's nothing good I can say about that Superman story. It's hard for me because I think the novelty of the Superman story was like a lot more gripping to me than this story, which felt like I knew all the story beats just starting it, kind of a thing.
So you knew you could expect that Al Harper was going to die?
Not that he was going to die, but like as soon as it's like one man has to die to save them all, it's like, okay, it's Al Harper.
It's interesting because maybe because I was reading this series at the time and I was so desperate for support.
At the time in 1969.
When I first read it, sorry. Stanley did this to the other supporting guys. Like, Silver Surfer saves a woman from the aliens, the invisible aliens, and they make you think that she's going to be his new supporting character, but she falls into a coma and she never shows up again. And so, like, Stanley dicks you around several times, and I thought, like, maybe because, like, I since you don't know if Al Harper's going to be a supporting character or not, like, it hit me in a way I didn't think it would. I don't know.
Especially like with what you were saying about Spider-Man, like how he has supporting characters show up and leave, and like Stanley was always evolving his casts.
Yeah, I agree. There is a level of unpredictability here that it more than like a lot of the like other Silver Age stories that we read. I think that the DC the reimagining of all this stuff, I had no goddamn idea where it was going.
Well, that's fair. I didn't have no idea either.
One of the things that's interesting that I was thinking of while you were talking about Stanley's style and how like he's so much more explicit and less flowery. Mm-hmm. That's I think why I really like him a lot, because like there are certain lines that are very like he speaks in platitudes a lot, where like a lot of his characters like, this is about the nature of man, and they like explicitly state that. But for me, like I feel like
it's like when you were reading through the Spider-Man thing, he very explicitly states everything he's feeling and going through, where it's like, I need to save Aunt May because that way it makes me feel avenged for failing Uncle Ben.
Yeah, and like as someone who's always like doing the pretentious postmodern like analysis of like, this is what it really means, there's something that really resonates with me when there's just a character being like, hey Brian, this is how I feel, you don't have to be pretentious about it, this is it. And like, I don't know, I feel like there's a nobility for his characters being like, there's no beating around the bush, I am heroic for these reasons. And I think that's what made them archetypical characters, where more like when you look at more modern characters, I don't think that they stand the test of time, or like the infamous nature that a lot of Stan Lee characters do, because you know what Stan Lee characters are about right away, and it like really hits me a lot.
Yeah, they're very plain in their heroicness.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, sorry for talking too much in this episode, but it's a Stanley episode, so it's very appropriate that we do so.
I am feeling this way because it makes me talk about comics.
Yeah.
I like how even in the Spider-Man issue, he says, like, he announces, a good thing I have time to dodge out of this gas, because they announced it before they did it.
They're like, we will hit you with gas. And he's like, thank you for announcing it. Now I'll hold my breath. I'm holding my breath right now. It is good to hold my breath.
Really, like, it is pretty full of that.
Yep.
But I'm glad you guys appreciate Stan Lee a little bit more now, because I was really worried that you guys would hate these a lot.
When Darryl was like, I think this is just as good as Just Imagine, I was like, ugh.
I remember I didn't say just as good. It's that I enjoyed them as much, I think was my terminology.
That's a key qualifier.
No, I understand the difference. But okay, so I think we've talked about Stan Lee enough.
Yeah, get out of here, Stanley.
Yeah, who are you anyway?
Yeah, what'd you do?
So we're done with the June whatever.
June Lee Live.
Yeah. And I do want to briefly mention the Flying Machine Network, which we are a part of. We mentioned it last week on Oops, but there is a new show on the network. And I know like we have a lot of overlap, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but you should check out the Pot Stirrer podcast. It's all like politics and stuff. and religion and all that stuff. But I want to specifically mention Falling in Love Montage because it's the end of the month, and for this whole month they've been doing Pride. So they've been doing LGBTQIA plus films, and they've had a lot of great guests that speak with a lot of experience in these matters, and it's been a really great month of like lots of diverse films that I feel like don't get talked about a lot. And so, yeah, everyone should check that and all the other shows out at the Flying Machine Network website. And you should also, if you want bonus episodes from all the shows, donate to the Patreon, patreon.com/Flying Machine. And we're recording this before CradleCon, but I'm going to preemptively thank people for coming to visit us. And if you didn't, well, now I'm sad. Phil, do you have a special podcast you guested on to plug?
Oh, yeah. I was on We'll Get It Right Next Year, a very interesting podcast where two assholes pretend that they don't... Oh, they're not pretending. They don't know what this movie's about, and they try to figure it out through a series of guests bringing on reviews.
You're going into so much detail for a show that I plug like once a month.
Okay, well, in case people don't know, I was on it, and that makes it the best episode, so you should check it out. That's it. It's called We'll Get It Right Next Year. You guys don't know that yet.
There's a link on the Franz Radio website that has all our previous episodes.
So thank you all for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been trying to kill humanity.
I've been finally accepting the death of Uncle Ben.
I've been testing people by hiding a secret bomb in Iraq.
And I've been so riddled with fear, with gnawing distrust.
Staying continuity.